To France now, where a horrific mass rape trial has gained global attention. Dominique Pelicot has admitted to drugging his wife Gisele and recruiting dozens of other men to abuse her unconscious body for nearly a decade. Gisele Pelicot has become a symbol of courage after insisting that the proceedings be held in public and facing her abusers in court. She says she wanted to shift the shame and humiliation often felt by victims on to the perpetrators. Now, her bravery has inspired others to bring their own cases to court.
Justine doesn't yet feel safe enough to talk publicly. She says she was raped and filmed after being given drugs in late 2021. But watching Gisele Pelicot has given her new hope. Pelicot is facing her abusers with her head held high and not behind closed doors, as usually in a rape case.
Gisele is a shining light that's exposing a dark side of society which some are trying to hide. We need to follow her lead. She stands for the power of speaking out, for the message that shame must change sides. It's the abusers who should feel ashamed, not us. She has given me the courage to return to court, which had put my case on hold. I will not give up until they pick it up again.
3 years ago, Justine says a female acquaintance drugged her and forced her into having sex with her and a man. She says the woman filmed the abuse and sent the videos to some of her friends and neighbours. Her lawyer filed rape charges after the police refused to do so.
I'm absolutely devastated by what's happened to me. I get up in the morning thinking of this rape and the videos of it. I have to live with this abuse every day. I go to bed with it, and the nightmares of it wake me up.
A trained psychologist, Justine has found her own way of keeping her head above water, while also helping other survivors.
I did a few sessions of hypnosis and EMDR trauma therapy and realised they were helping me a lot. And so I learned how to give such therapy sessions to my patients, many of whom have been sexually abused. By helping them heal, I am healing myself. Maybe one day these deep wounds will close, but the scars of what we've gone through will be there forever.
She hopes French society will be forced to change now, triggered by the sheer horror of the Pelicot case.
Through this court case, something has started that cannot be stopped. I hope that, in the future, the police will have to systematically follow up on our complaints, and the courts will have to take them into account. Her lawsuit shines a light on chemical submission. It highlights how even Mr. Average could be a rapist, and that chemical submission is really widespread across all walks of life.
The government will revive a parliamentary commission on chemical submission, which could initiate a shift in the law. Justine is hoping that this will help her and other survivors to finally feel less alone.
TW correspondent Lisa Louis is following the story for us from Paris. She filed that report. Lisa, we just heard the way this trial is being conducted has already had an impact. Can you tell us a bit more?
Well, there has been a huge wave of support. You briefly saw it in my report. You know, dozens of women regularly come to the courthouse in the morning in the southern city of Avignon. When Gisele Pelicot arrives there, they're applauding her. There have also been demonstrations in France of support. Another round of nationwide demonstrations is planned for this Saturday, and messages of support that have been put up in the streets of Avignon. You know, many people are watching this case very closely here in France and also abroad, because as we heard, Gisele Pelicot has decided to have this court case take place, open to the public, and that is really exposing the trauma that she has gone through. And also something that we heard in my report, she says shame must change sides, because many victims of sexual abuse, their first reaction is, was it my fault? Did I do something wrong? And she's now saying, no, I haven't done anything anything wrong, the shame is all on the other side, and everybody should see this.
And the details of her case that are coming to light have been truly shocking. Now, this case has also triggered a discussion in France about what constitutes a sex crime. What's that debate about?
Well, absolutely. The question of consent is really central here. In a country that only in 2021 established a formal age of consent of 15 years. Before that, there was the argument that had been made at court that, children who were 11 years old might have consented to sexual intercourse. So this is really something that France needs to think about. Some of the accused at this court case, during this court case, have been saying, I thought she agreed to have sex with me while Gisele Pelicot was actually snoring or unconscious. Others have been making the argument that her husband had given consent and that was good enough. And then obviously there were some of the accused who came to the Pelicot's house and then said, no, I'm not doing this. They walked away and they didn't alert anybody. So there is a huge discussion to be held here about, what it is that is consent and also how people should react when they see these horrible things happening.
Do you expect this trial to change attitudes in France towards sexual violence and especially also the role of the victim?
Well, I think a discussion is already taking place, but those who are defending victims of sexual violence, but also, of chemical submission, are saying more needs to happen. More politicians need to speak out. Some are also asking for the statute of limitation to be dropped. In case of rape, this is up to, between 10 and 20 years at most. And so some people who have been abused while they were children can't even sue their abusers. And that might change. Some people are asking for this to change. And there's also a case regarding the lawyers. Victims' associations have been asking for lawyers to be held to account when they don't actually behave in a good way and when they subject the accuser to additional harm. So a lot of discussion is taking place here.
Let's explore some of these issues with Ummni Kahn, who is an associate professor in the Department of Law at Carleton University in Ottawa, where she researches the socio-legal construction of deviant sexuality. She joins us from Victoria in British Columbia. Welcome to DW. Gisele Pelicot's case made headlines around the world. How important has that been in encouraging other victims to come forward?
It's been incredibly important because, as it was just being spoken about, it's shifting the blame so that it's not just the perpetrators, but it's the law and the culture that's to blame. And she is being seen as a hero and as a model. And now I'm seeing articles all over the world about people talking about being victims of this kind of abuse where chemical or intoxication is involved. And it isn't just strangers. So we're traditionally taught, oh, be careful, you're at a bar, don't let your drink out of your sight. But now we're seeing more and more cases of people who've been drugged unknowingly by a loved one, by someone in their own home.
And the laws around rape in France seem rather fraught. Talk to us about the legal definition and how it differs from elsewhere.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. In France, the definition is sexual penetration or oral genital contact that is done by violence, coercion, threat, or surprise. And it doesn't have the words consent in it. So it's not part of the definition. Now, some French legal experts are saying, well, it's implied, it's part of the definition. But if you don't have the wording, then you have ambiguity. And then the other problem with the ambiguity is that the defendants are saying, oh, we got consent from the husband. But what the law needs to clarify is that you can't get consent on behalf of someone else. If you want to have a sexual interaction with someone, you need to get their direct consent. But this kind of vicarious consent through the husband needs to be directly prohibited in the law. And I think there's some ambiguity in France, and they've been trying to change it. There's a movement that's been trying to change that law in France to add a consent-based definition so you can erase that ambiguity. And they faced some resistance from people who said, no, it's going to be hard on the defendant, or you're going to kill the dance of seduction. But of course, coercion and non-consensual interactions are not seduction. And so I think this case is now really renewed in interest in changing that law and making it clear.
And just to be clear, this is beyond academic. The defence that he gave consent on her behalf has been used successfully.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's been used successfully in many different countries. So in Canada, where I'm from, now in our statute, it specifically says you cannot get consent on behalf of someone else. But I mean, in this case, I would believe it would have been a non-starter if they had that kind of law where it says, no, it's just automatically not legitimate consent if you got it from a third party. But here, not only is it that they got it from a third party, but they're falling into that traditional notion that a husband owns his wife's body and sexuality.
And just on that
we
point,
need to just remember that the law. Oh, yes.
Just on that point, do we expect, therefore, this case to lead to a change in French law? Because it sounds like society is somewhat behind this idea.
Yes, I think that this case is a horrifying example of what can go wrong when you don't clarify the law. And so I expect, and it seems that there's renewed interest to talk about this. And I would expect that the law might change there. And just to throw it out, the EU might renew its interest in shifting and having an EU law specifically about rape and making consent be part of that definition.
OK, thank you for talking us through that so clearly. Associate Professor Ummni Kahn from Carleton University. Thank you.
Thank you.